G'day Australian men and women, and welcome to the Red Pill Sparky. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Viewers are, as always, advised to do their own research and to ask questions while it's still legal and if fluoride levels allow. Like feeding them, give that a go. It means taking sovereignty over your own mind. It's freedom. You'll love it. Anyway, today we're going to look at the phenomenal racing career of Aussie legend Mick Doohan, a man who can be described as determination and channeled aggression personified, who brought more joy to fans of the dangerous era of the 500 GP road racing than government has brought people misery. Well, almost. But before we get into all that, a word from our sponsors. The Light Australia is a newspaper which rightly boasts being the uncensored truth. Their website is simply thelightaustralia.com. Have a look at their site, read an issue or two or even 3 online. Ask yourself why the mainstream media don't run the same stories. Why don't you buy a few issues and hand them out? That's what I do. Conversation by conversation, we can help the awakening continue. You can also support them by flicking them a donation or buying some merchandise. Did you know that didyouknow.inc is a website which has brochures and stickers, and I love the stickers. They all have a QR code which takes the sleepwalker to the rabbit hole. The rest is up to them. If you want the didyouknow.inc stickers printed at next to cost price, please contact my friend Tanya at Get Bruceted Printing. The details are on the screen. Now, if we're going to be dealing with a living legend like Mick Doohan, we have a lot of legendary achievements to cover, so let's kick it off like a dead leopard's head. Rumour has it that while in the womb, Mick's right hand was constantly in the throttle and front brake position. But anyway, Mick was born on the 4th of June 1965 on the Gold Coast, and he actually built the hospital he was born in. As youngsters, Mick and his 2 brothers, Cole and Scott, would be fighting over whatever motorcycles inhabited their family home, so to put a stop to all the bickering, the old man sprang for a brand new MR50 for Mick when Mick was just 8, to replace the various shit heaps and hopefully shut all the kids up. There was no stopping little Mick Doohan, but the revenuers did have occasion to pull the brothers up on an all too regular basis, so Mum and Dad Doohan decided to put the lads into North Brisbane Minicycle Club. Wouldn't you know it, little Mick, the boy with 87 million kilometres of small intestine and a fluency in 144 languages, would proceed to win the 50cc North Brisbane Club Championship in his first season, if you don't mind. In 1972, Mick's old man brought a Honda motorcycle dealership, and this gave the boys access to all the latest go-fast goodies. From now on, the Doohan boys' bikes would be breathed on, and dirt track and motocross pretty much took over their lives. 1976, and that's when fat people were jolly, and Mick came second in the Queensland Flat Track Championship on a clapped-out YZ80. Not bad. In April 1977, however, the boy's father died. Mick was 11 at the time, and this event is something he took pretty hard. Things changed in the Doohan household, and Mick had a 2-year hiatus from racing with any real intent. He came third in the Queensland Dirt Track Series on a CR125, and it wasn't long before he showed signs of being something pretty special. Yeah, you're special too, but you're not mighty Mick Doohan. He won a motocross race, for instance, by taking jumps 2 at a time when everyone else was taking them 1 at a time, and he won by a big margin, something that would become a Mick Doohan trademark. But he still wasn't fully committed to and obsessed by motorcycle racing as he'd been before his dad had passed away. At best, during this period, while he was undeniably super talented, he was drifting in and out of racing. He quit school in 1981, and to quote the book Mick Doohan by Matt Oxley, recommended read, he had never been a model pupil, rebelling against the fierce regime of a Catholic school he had attended in his early years and taking little interest in classroom activities from there on. He was often in trouble, sometimes for truancy, other times for daydreaming in class, drawing pictures of motorbikes on school books. Yeah, well, I'm with you there, mighty Mick. Maybe that's because school is pretty much a GovCo indoctrination camp designed to teach you to be a good little clock puncher and to quash any spirit from you, with its prison-like system of set schedules and bells that tell you when you can go outside or when you can eat, and having to ask permission to go to the toilet. I mean, zoom out, your tax file number is generated when you were birthed, not born, but birthed, because that event is when you are invested in as a lucrative little chattel slave, and the investors want you programmed now, don't they? And if you factor in the Roman Catholic Church, it's not exactly sounding like freedom or imagination we'll ever get a look in. Sorry, I just couldn't resist and said voluntary. Now, where were we? Oh yes, Mick Doohan. Also in '81, he got together with a former schoolmate to race 80cc's as, Still being fairly small for his age, the 80 fitted him well. Now, with someone once again to cart him around and provide a little bit of backup in the pits, he was once again racing dirt track and motocross weekly. Mick Doohan was back. There were plenty of victories and Mick's racetrack aggression was now beginning to show. When he was still 16, Mick had an XR250 which ended up being stolen. The insurance money went towards an RD250LC. All the best blokes had an RD250LC and the best of the best had one or more RD350LCs. Just saying. He lost his licence 5 times before he was 20 for speeding and for pulling wheelies. To quote Mick, because he's like the Emperor, you can't actually hear his voice lest you spontaneously bloody combust. So I'll read the quote for you. He says, "I never raced the thing, but I enjoyed messing around and scraping the foot pegs." Sparky note here, just think of how absolutely shit tyres were back then. And remember that the right foot peg was designed to fold to allow you to kickstart an RD. And you're talking about some serious balls there. Comparing Mick to his mates on motorcycles, Mick goes on, "I had a lot more experience. I'd already done 10 years on bikes, so I was a lot more confident than them. I used to try stuff out, like how far you can go in the wet. Like this day I was going for a job interview. It was raining and I was going around corners thinking this doesn't feel bad, so I pushed a bit harder at the next corner and slid down the road, skinning my hands. I think the guy was impressed I made it, so I got the job." In 1983, Mick and some mates set off for the Bathurst bike races and he flipped the RD while trying to impress some bastard on a Z1000. Sparky note here, all the best blokes have flipped a sled on the road. If you haven't, it's like blindfolded archery, you just don't know what you're missing. Actually, no, it's fucking expensive and embarrassing and you lose skin, I don't recommend it. Now that year at Bathurst, the friendly riot police took to bashing people. To quote Mick again, "I watched them pull some guy out of a tree and lay into him with their batons." Statism in action, I suppose, or your taxes at work. He'd soon trade in his somewhat second-hand RD for an RZ350, aka RD350 YPVS in some countries. Cunningly, Mick had the shop stick 250 stickers to it, allowing him to get away with riding it. Now I'm talking about sneaking around the ridiculous, arbitrary and often bloody dangerous 250cc limited licence scheme back then. When it comes to so-called laws, statutory laws that is, yet again we see that it is written by parasites that most people programmed with statism consider to be authorities. So you will obey, and if you question it, the state's thugs will kidnap, assault and deprive you. But anyway, nice one Mick, love your work. Mick then moved in with mates at Burleigh Head, then to a squat in Surfers Paradise, which sounds like, from all accounts, living in the shithouse of a Turkish prison. But it was all wine, women and song, and his two-stroke Yami, of course. He discovered that for a nominal fee he could carve up the road racing track at Surfers Paradise Raceway. He was this young hoon keeping pace with Michael Dowson, one of Australia's best road racers of the era, on road tyres with treads, and by virtue of being steeped in dirt track racing from a very young age, letting the rear tyre hang out all the way. So before long word gets out about this maniac named Doohan or whoever who's steering the bike with the fucking back wheel and making the tarmac his bitch. Now, I'm with Jeremy Clarkson in that I like to believe that all things with an engine have a soul. I also believe in past lives, so I can only deduce that whatever this poor little RZ was at its past incarnation, it must have done something really friggin' bad, like killed her, and then pissed on him and buried him upside down. Or maybe it wore socks with thongs. Something very wrong anyway, because, like a few road bikes that have been in the Red Pill Sparky's own stable, in this life it's suffered. So because at the bike wreckers, not now, but one day back then, and it's sanctioned. The wrecker, a fellow named Bob Cowley, fixes the RZ for nothing if Mick agrees to race it, with Bob paying the entry fee. Mick had nothing to lose, and in his first road race he finishes in second place. Again, not bad. Next thing, Mick is on an RG250 fresh from the Suzuki importer and gets knocked off in a warm-up. But he gets back on the grid, the bike a little worse for wear, and laps the effing field, like first race on the thing. Weeks later he wins again, his second race on the RG, and he just fucking wins again, because he's Mick Doohan. Then he and his sponsor have a bit of a blow-up. Mick tells him to push the bike right up his jacksie. Bye-bye any arrangement between those two, but Mick is the main character in the whole Mick Doohan story, obviously, so don't worry, he'll have his Tijuana brass back in the seat of a road racing sled before too long and he'll be wowing you with his otherworldly skills. It's his destiny. And that sled would be an RZ500 again at Surfers Paradise, and that RZ would, naturally, be sideways full noise and shredding rubber, But, Mick Doohan or not, remain on the edge for long enough, and with input from gravity, physics, etc., at some point you're going to be fed your own arse. The RZ was binned and Mick suffered a broken collarbone, because no one enjoys a broken collarbone, do they? This, or not too long afterwards, is where things get at least semi-organised. Mick is draped in camouflage overalls and the bike is done up in camo paint. Ironically, the bike and rider really stood out with camouflage and the attention was the desired result. Mick's proclivity to win every time, it was just a matter of by how much, certainly did no harm in the attention department either. In early 1986, Mick raced outside of Queensland, heading south. Because there's nothing north of Queensland, it's where the map says here be dragons and you fall off the edge of the fucking world and maybe land by the side of the road out of some portal like I'm being John Malkovich. Anyway, there's Mick at the Castrol 6 Hour at Oran Park on a Gixxer 750. Now bear in mind, he hadn't ridden it before, he'd never raced on that track, he got precious little practice time, but he still gave a bloody good account of himself. So good that sponsors' eyes were on this loose and very promising young racer, and Mick was given a brand new FZ 750 at cost price to race, and he did just that, as well as punting an RZ 500 and a freshly built RZ 250, as you do. No, he didn't ride them simultaneously. If anyone could, he could have, but he didn't. Which begs the question. If rego is justified and isn't simply effing extortion enforced by thugs to line the pockets of pedo-protecting bastards who seek to fleece the sheep on their tax farm at every opportunity, why can't we own several so-called vehicles, to use the commercial term, like say 2 cars and 3 motorcycles, and only pay for one rego because only one machine will be on the road at any one time? Oh, that's right, I get it. It is extortion, plain and simple, and it gets back to the whole authority thing, and automatically cowering to the threats of the despicable fleas who work for, and worse, enforce, the system. Yes, the machines will still have a plate to identify them and link them to their owner, so try a little harder, you Stockholm Syndrome affected dicks who just want to defend the state all the time. It wouldn't affect the roadworthiness of any of the machines either. In fact, the only thing that would have changed is that whoever owns the machines isn't being financially shafted for wanting to run, say, a work van and a car to get the kids around, and a dirt bike and a motorcycle to tour on every now and then. Most arguments I've heard, from pond life mostly, consist of, if you can afford the machine, you can afford the rego. Yeah? Well, that doesn't justify it. By your very own rationale, if you can afford to give me, say, I don't know, $980.40 per year, I therefore have a right to exact it from you. How does fuck off sound? Same goes for your stamp duty. And that's without getting into the whole Admiralty commerce thing when we're going to use words like stamp duty. It just stinks, as do most acts which stream sweat equity directly into the state's coffers exclusively for the sake of profit. It has to stop. Sorry, where were we? That's right, Mick Doohan, the legend. By the end of that year, Mick was racing in the Swan 250 Proddy Bike Series. The stepping stone path of racing 250 production to Australian superbikes to 500 GP bikes was nothing new. Other Aussie legends like Darryl Beattie, Peter Goddard, Matt Mladen and Anthony Gobert had all trod that same path. By the way, at least one of those names is earmarked to feature in a future Red Pill Sparky video. Mick's talent was now being noticed by some important movers and shakers, including someone from Tokyo. And Tokyo, unless they've moved it or global warming has caused it to float to bloody South America, is in Japan. In '87, Mick concentrated on the TZR 250 series. After the Bathurst round, Mick says, "This Japanese guy comes up and asks me if I want to do the Suzuka 8 hours. I said, sure, sounds pretty trick. It's around now that Michael Dowson breaks his leg, so Warren Willing, the team manager, gives Mick a shot on the FZR 750 at Winton in the following Superbike round. Mick accepts the offer, and in his first Superbike ride, he came 5th. Not bad. He then proceeded to win the TZR Cup, of course, and then said, as he's spraying champagne, because it'd be weird if it was real pain, wasn't there something else I had to do? Oh yes, Suzuka. Well, his bike was a shitter, and Mick and his teammates qualified 38th out of 50 teams. And the whole thing was a shit show. Shit bike whose shit gearbox failed and sent Mick's teammate into the weeds, saying no shit. But again, shitter or not, Mick's talent didn't go unnoticed, and if anywhere in the world was ever going to be, Japan is full of important Japanese people. I mean, it's the home of Masashi after all, and there'll be a Red Pill Sparky video on Masashi one of these days. So there's Mick, the mighty Mick, in Suzuka, and he's fast, yeah? And one of these important Japanese people invites him to compete in Sugo in the TTF1 World Championship, alongside none other than Joey Dunlop. I mean, wow. Mick had gone to having the arse out of his strides, fossicking for spares at the wreckers to keep his absolute rat of an RZ on the Frog and Toad, to the big money racing. At Sugo, he outqualifies the big names, finishing third, mind you. It was McGee who won the race, by the way, and here's what he had to say about Doohan's race. Mick was going through the hairpin and flip-flop, doing everything absolutely right, the same every lap, and right on the fucking limit. That's when I knew he could ride. He was a definite gun. Spot on, Kevin, spot on. Mick recalls getting the chunk of prize money and thinking that he could at least make a living at racing bikes. His mother recalls finding bundles of prize money stashed around his bedroom. A bit like an electrician, I guess. And remember, cash is freedom. He also did the Fuji F1 race that year, coming fifth, as well as at the Oran Park 6 Hour, which he led in typical Doohan fashion, until the engine shut itself. Shit happens. For 88, he was offered a full-time ride by Warren Willing. Let's flash back again and get this. In less than 5 months, he'd gone from 250 proddy racer to official superbike racer, and on a Gasper-sponsored bike too, because that's cool. In another 10 months, he'd signed his first 500 contract. Destroying the opposition in his first year, the serious money offers now came flooding in for Mick. Honda flew some people down to Oran Park where Mick beat his teammate Doohan by over 20 seconds and everyone else by 30 seconds or more, making him, if it were possible, even hotter property now. Yamaha, however, were also keen, as were Suzuki, and took him to their headquarters for contract talks. Well, they wanted Mick to stay on the 4-stroke for the time being at least. They did let him have a go on a 500 at their test track. As 500s were wont to do back then, even to the savvy veteran, let alone the unwary, loose kid, talented or not, the 500 threw him in the air. Thanks for coming, Mick, but just a warning, this is the world you were thinking of stepping into. So next thing, Mick glimpsed into Honda's impressive facilities where he was seduced. The rest is history, as they say. But fuck it, I ain't done, so you keep listening and I'll keep talking. Yami offered Mick a deal, but too late. He'd already signed up with HRC on a Gasper-sponsored NSR. Way fucking cool. Oh, and to all you scale modelers out there, if you haven't already had a crack at Tamiyar's various 112 scale NSR 500s, or even their newer kit of the older NR 500, give them a go. Modelling is just one of my hobbies. That and sarcasm. And being shot out of a cannon and caught by Scandinavian women's volleyball teams. Well, the scale modelling thing actually happens. The cannon thing doesn't. No, and neither does the sarcasm. So Mick went from 40 horsepower on a proddy bike to 180 brake horsepower. And I can't put too much emphasis on this, in under 1.5 years. And those 180 netties, by the way, were not delivered in a polite way back then. Oh no. When Mick turned up to Suzuka in 1989 to test the previous year's NSR 500, it was the sort of motorcycle that anyone possessed of normal bravery would only dare poke out with a long stick and then run away squealing. It was midwinter in Japan also, by the way. Handy. Eddie Lawson put it this way, riding the Honda was like death. Every time you flicked into a turn, you didn't know if you'd make it out. For 89, Honda had tried to curb the delivery of horsepower, something which Honda was always good at extracting more of from any motor, down to something approximating just plain insane by changing the V4's firing order. Mick himself also made something approximating insane, his helmet design. Let's just say I'm not tempted to buy one. It looked like the Happy Pants from that era, and that's something I'd rather forget, but hey, I did see a lot of fans back then sporting a Mick Doohan replica lid, and I still see the occasional one now, so good luck to him. Anyway, Phillip Island, a place that this here Sparky knows oh so well, and Mick comes 8th after destroying 2 fingers when he crashed at Southern Loop in qualifying. Ouch! That's the incident which introduced him to Dr. Costa, and we'll hear some more about him in the Mick Doohan story soon. If I were the doctor, I'd have told him to dip his fingers in cider. But I'm an electrician. Mick was fast becoming buddies with Eddie Lawson, but as for his teammate and once world champ Wayne Gardner, also a talented and hard as a coffin nail racer for whom I have great respect, the pair didn't exactly hit it off with a bromance. And his relationship with the NSR after binning it too many times wasn't what you'd call robust either. To quote Mick again, I actually feared hopping on the motorcycle. If his fingers were in a bad way after Phillip Island, crashing with Robbie Phillips at the Suzuka 8 Hour, with Gardner as his partner by the way, chopped one of them off. Ouch. Cider. Insider. Get it? Back to the 500s, and Mick was, by now, focused on his fitness instead of habitually drinking enough piss to extinguish a house fire. He'd also developed a nemesis to focus on in Wayne Rainey, and was finally coming to grips with his first year on the 500s. But, just as a reminder of the nature of the 500s, while testing at Suzuka, in winter, the NSR chucked him over the bars and broke his left upper arm. As well as his little fingers screwed together, He'd have a plate in his arm as a souvenir of what turned out to be a somewhat shaky introductory year. 1990, and Mick is resolute. He'd be 100% committed, training as hard as he'd once partied. He was getting along better with JB, the chief mechanic, and his gripes about the bike, particularly its brakes, were beginning to be heard by his HRC handlers. In September in Hungary, Mick took his first 500 win. The champagne flowed. Real pain would be just weird. I know I said it before, I'm giving you a second chance. That year he podiumed twice, a shitload better than the previous year. He'd also got the fastest lap twice. In 91, out of 15 rounds, Mick stood on the podium 14 times, the only exception being a DNF after a crash. That included 3 wins and a fastest lap. 1992 is a year that Doohan fans remember well. By the way, it's also worth mentioning Gardner's last race at Suzuka in that year, a race that any motorcycle racing fan and or any student of sheer grit and determination needs to check out. So long, Wayne. Thanks. Now Mick hit the ground running. Let's look at the results. Race 1, first, fastest lap. Race 2, first, fastest lap. Race 3, first. Race 4, first, fastest lap. Race 5, second. Race 6, second, fastest lap. Race 7, first, fastest lap. Race 8, Assen, the Netherlands. Mick is on 130 points, some 65 points ahead of Rainey and 53 points ahead of Schwantz. But there's many a slip betwixt cup and a lip, and this is when things all went wrong for Mick. This is where the real pain replaced the champagne. At 160 kilometres per hour, Doohan is spat from the seat. As he tried to turn, still sliding down the road, he realised his right leg was broken, and how. He's carted to Dr. Costa's mobile Aussie, where his options are discussed. Simply fixing the brake wasn't just it. It was a matter of where it would be done and what method would get Mick back in the NSR seat as soon as possible. He had a championship or 5 to win after all. Now the leg had compartment syndrome, so at a Dutch hospital the doctors sliced it open to relieve the pressure, but then more or less parked Mick in the corner and forgot about him, not even changing the bandages. Mick's leg looked like something a hungry dog wouldn't sniff, and it wasn't going to fix itself. In fact, he was close to having it amputated. So, like Otto Scorzani rescuing Mussolini from Gran Sasso in a glider, or maybe not quite, Dr. Costa turns up in a Learjet ambulance to rescue, or is it kidnap, Mick. He also takes Schwantz with him, who was banged up at the same hospital from the same crash, and he whisked them both back to Italy to sort shit out. And this was no hangnail. In essence, Costa sewed Mick's legs together to get blood from his good leg into, the chopped up fucking dog meat gone bad one. Mick might have sold a few of those helmets with a design you still have to yell to hear over, but he'd never model shorts on the catwalk again. I don't think he ever did that anyway. Still, now he has 2 legs instead of 1 or 1.5, thanks to Dr. Costa's work. You might also want to check out what Dr. Costa did to save Aaron's slight hand to keep him racing. While most people would spend years recovering and feeling sorry for themselves and all that shit, Mick Doohan isn't most people. He's Mick Doohan. His return to the GP that year for the final 2 rounds is pretty hard to watch. He pushes himself to turn up, and the world would have forgiven him for staying home, on the couch, like the rest of us slobs who drink ales and eat pizza while we only just watch the racing. From being the man who only a fool would have bet against, he became, well, not exactly promising. He did manage to qualify 3rd in South Africa, but would he make a comeback? The following year, 1993, and Mick qualified on pole 4 times, got 3 fastest laps and 6 podium finishes, including a win at San Marino. By the way, as his right leg was Wallaby Ted's cousin, that's Roo Ted, he devised a rear brake that could be operated by his left thumb. Clutching at straws? Maybe, but other races and other disciplines whose right legs weren't rooted also adopted the idea. Aussie ingenuity. In the US though, on Laguna Seca's infamously nasty corkscrew, Mick bins it. Truly Milo-silo clenching stuff. I did say it's hard to watch. The injury from that particular off put paid to the last round at Harama, as it did not start. 1994, now in the almost as loud as his helmet Repsol livery, Mick and the NSR 500 are once again a formidable, and as it turns out unbeatable, force. Results? 3rd, first fastest lap. 2nd, first fastest lap. Ditto for the next round. Ditto again, next round. Round 8, first. Then first, fastest lap. Then 2nd, then 1st, and then 3rd. Come on, Mick, lift your game. Oh, and we got 1st, fastest lap. That's better. And then we got 2nd, fastest lap. Oh, and while we're on it, I almost forgot. World champion! Hooray! Mick would of course go on to win 5 consecutive 500cc GP World Championships and rebuild the pyramids and not just the Egyptian ones. Mick never once completed a tax return. He just sends pictures of himself doing this and they give him whatever he wants. His record of 54 500 wins is still up there, and for a young beach bum from Queensland who was once scrounging around the motorcycle records to keep his long-suffering RZ250 on the road, and who all but lost a leg, that makes him a Red Pill Sparky Aussie legend. If you enjoyed this story, please hit subscribe. Please visit my sponsors' pages and maybe buy the Red Pill Sparky a coffee, or check me out at patreon.com. Details are on the screen. Thanks everyone. Please discover freedom and start living in the parallel nation. I'll see you in the next video. Why did dickheads say that? It's more accurate to say that you'll see me in the next video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Adios.
And everybody lives their life differently, but the people who have a crack, and they have a crack properly, generally achieve what they're having a crack at, because they're willing to hop off that couch. They're willing to sort of sacrifice, again, if that's the word you use, not going to the pub on the Saturday or Friday afternoon or whatever to see their mates. But, you know, you soon learn that you can come back 6 months, 12 months, 36 months later, have a beer with them, and they're still doing the same thing, talking the same shit, you know, and really in 10, 20 years time, they're still doing the same, a lot of the guys. So, and that's not to say that that's the wrong way to do things, but I think if you've got an itch that you need to scratch, then you need to have a crack and go and see if it's worth pursuing. But because if you don't do it, then you know, we're one of those people. I could have done that. You know, I could. Well, fuck, why didn't you?